morning, everybody, parents, students, alumni, and anybody else I've forgotten. My name is John Martin. I am president of the Midland Alumni Association, a former parent and current trustee. Most of all, I have the privilege of being MC for this morning's presentation of the John Dreyfus Distinguished Alum Award. Now, despite the fact that we just had a Latin lesson, I'm saying alum because it's pretty tedious to say alumnus/alumnae every time you want to say, or alumna every time you want to say this. So I'm going for just 2 syllables, alum. Welcome to the 21st century. I'm going to introduce this morning's presentation by talking about 3 abstract concepts, and then I'm going to make them real by way of introducing today's award and our speakers. So the 3 abstract concepts that I think are really part and parcel of what Midland is. The first one, community. Midland is a community that you join when anyone in your family becomes a student here, and that you remain part of, like it or not, for the rest of your life. Look at all the alumni who've been here this weekend and who are here today meeting up with old friends, making sure that not too much has changed, and taking every opportunity to tell current students how much tougher things were when they were here. The second abstract concept that I want to put in front of you is sustainability. Now, sustainability is the popular current term for something Midland has been doing since 1932. Live your life and run your community with a light touch on the earth and its resources, and in a way that means that you will be here and your community will be here in 10 or 100 years. Third, and for me the big one, stewardship. Your job in life is to work to leave everything you come in contact with or that you are part of better than you find it. You owe that to your family, your friends, your communities, and all that you are part of. So these are abstract concepts. You often hear about them, but what do they mean in practice? Let's look at the Dreyfus Award, today's recipient, our speakers, for examples. First, the award itself. John Dreyfus, who graduated from Midland in 1952, was also a Midland faculty member. He gave greatly in that capacity by trying to teach my classmates and me algebra. He then retired from education. Went on to many other things as a distinguished journalist. And aside from the tactical error of trying to teach my classmates and me algebra, he was a really smart guy. Among other things, he married the headmaster's daughter. He had 3 great children, and he was a Midland trustee for many years. So that combines all of the abstract concepts that I was speaking about. One of those children, Jim, is sitting up here. You'll hear from him in a few minutes. And rather than going through the whole Dreyfus family tree and introducing all the Dreyfus children and grandchildren and so on, I'd like to illustrate the abstract concept of community by asking everyone here who is named Dreyfus, is married to or related to someone named Dreyfus, or friends with someone named Dreyfus, to stand up. See? All right. Point made. So I think we have community and sustainability pretty well covered in that single illustration. Let's look at stewardship in person. Our award recipient, Jenny Stine, whom you'll hear from and about, has made a career of making things better than she finds them. And you can read all about that on the back of the program. Her friends and children are going to tell you why she's great. So, to get on with that, let me introduce our first speaker, Jim Dreyfus, class of 1981, and each speaker will introduce the speaker following them so that I didn't have to memorize all the names.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Jenny, for including a Dreyfus in the presentation. Jenny was in my sister's class, and unfortunately, Kimmy couldn't make it here today, so I'm here in her stead. So Jenny and I were at Midland together. She was in my sister Kimmy's class, 1 year below me. I remember Jenny as a happy, pleasant student. She got good grades, she was a good athlete, she loved horses, and she loved horsing around. I had heard bits and pieces about her achievements post-Midland. When John called me to tell me she had been selected to be recognized for them with this award, I was very happy. Jenny is the kind of person my dad would have liked and respected. In addition to all the attributes previously mentioned, Jenny is brave and determined. She sets her sights high and goes for it, achieves her goal, and moves on to the next one. I read that she's an expert in organizational behavior, leadership, and teamwork, and I can't wait to hear how her Midland experiences have influenced her. Self-reliance, independence, interdependence, community. Do the work needed at the time and just get it done. Be useful. Perhaps Midland was her first workshop, which has led her to a life and career of helping others on a massive scale. Entrepreneur, educator, 3 degrees from Stanford, including a PhD in history, horseman, wife, mother, and friend. Congratulations, Jenny. You make us all proud. The next speaker is Jean Johnson Griffin.
Interesting being back here and back on the stage, and thank you, Jenny, for inviting me to speak on your behalf. I remember the day that Jenny Stine arrived. It was 1979. I was a freshman, and she was a sophomore. We were part of the first group of female students at Midland School. To put my initial perception of Jenny in some sort of context, I will say that this was the time of the preppy handbook. Some of us here will remember that. The how-to guide on how to tie your sweater, pop your collar, and the often furious debate over whether or not you put a penny in your loafer or not. I, as a mixed-race scholarship kid from LA, referenced this book as a true guide for how I could somehow fit in at this college prep boarding school. Jenny was beautiful and blonde with a bright smile, a lightness in her step, and decked to the nines in her Izod and LOB splendor. She was accompanied by her loving family, and her cream-colored Cocker Spaniel and the most elegant thoroughbred horse I had ever seen were in tow. Jenny was the embodiment of everything that I thought I wanted to be and everything that I wanted. I thought she has all the tools to fit in quickly and that her route ahead would be an easy journey. The following year, as an upperclassman with excellent grades, Jenny could have lived anywhere on campus, meaning she could have chosen to not live someplace where one had to chop wood for a hot evening shower. Instead, Jenny chose to live with me in the newly built Whittier Quad. That same year, she also became the first female head of horse program. With passion and 100% commitment, she took on the very challenging and demanding role, both physically and mentally, of the responsibility of overseeing the care of the school's horses and barn. Jenny did not take the easy route. In her senior year, Jenny became one of the first female students to have the leadership role of a head of school prefect. As second prefect, Jenny led with strength, fairness, and grace. She paved the way for other female students to have a voice in what had been and still was a predominantly male-oriented program. There was not a precedent set yet at Midland for how girls could and should balance strength, intelligence, leadership, and femininity. To say the least, Jenny did not take the easy route. On a personal level, Jenny was a great friend. Jenny saw the best in me when I didn't see it in myself. Anything that I said I wanted to be or to do, Jenny would support. Not just in words, but in action. Jenny was the first ever to say to me, "Jean, do it, and how can I help? Jean, do it, and I will do it with you." In our friendship that year, there wasn't she and me, there was we. Together we could do anything. My best year on every level at Midland was the year that I roomed with Jenny Stine. I realized much later that the things that I wanted and that I saw in Jenny had nothing to do with the color of her skin, her hair, her wardrobe, her dog, or her horse. It was the authentic quality and integrity of her thoughtful character and generous spirit. Her beauty and radiance came from within. She is and was admired and rewarded not because she got things right, but because she had the courage to try and never took the easy route. After graduation, life took Jenny and I in different directions. When we reconnected, I was honored when she asked me to speak on her behalf at this ceremony. On our first conversation catching up, Jenny said about herself that she really hadn't changed and that she thought that she was the same person that she was at Midland. And I said, good, because that was and is a pretty great person. Jenny, congratulations. So I'd like to introduce Jenny's beautiful children, David House and Katie House.
We'd like to start off by thanking Midland for honoring our mother for her work and her contributions. We feel so honored to introduce you all to our mama.
We grew up in California and it's really nice to be back.
Before we get started, we'd like to get something out of the way.
Our mom is crazy.
Let us tell you what we mean.
When I was really little, I was exploring our basement in our house in Cambridge.
Our mom chose for our first home in Boston a 200-year-old townhouse built on land that was once a swamp. The crooked floors only added to the charm. Our mom was never afraid to take risks.
Exactly, like the time that she decided to open up the hallway and took a sledgehammer and started opening up the door, actually. Anyway, I was exploring the basement and I noticed a giant cardboard box that was unlabeled. So I decided to open it, as kids do, and I found tons of ribbons that I didn't really know what they meant. So I brought them up to my mom and I was like, "What are these ribbons?" And she said, "Oh, those are my horse medals." And my face was just in awe because I had never fully realized how crazy she was about horses until I saw hundreds of ribbons in our basement. And that's my first realization how much Midland meant to her, just by those enormous ribbons in the basement. I also noticed how many horses that she had in the basement, just figurines. And I thought, you know, she must be really crazy about horses. But what's amazing is that she's not only crazy, but she embraces her craziness.
She also encouraged us to do the same. When I wanted to walk through my 7th grade classroom dressed as a Jedi with full Tunisian desert robes and all, she said, "Go for it." 1 year later, when I wanted to dye my hair 3 different colors, she said, "That's great." She brought me to her same salon, but it didn't work with her stylist. I worked with this other guy who worked there who had like full body tattoos and like dyed pink spiky hair. I looked up to him so much. He was so punk rock. And I just really appreciated her encouraging me to just be as myself as possible.
Even in our adult life, she helps us take crazy risks. One day I woke up and I thought, I want to work in finance. I had no idea what finance actually meant. So I decided I was going to move to New York City, and I called up my mom and I was like, I want to work on Wall Street in New York. And she said, "Go for it, why not?" And it's things like that will always encourage me to sort of take those risks and to put me out of my comfort zone. And I'll always appreciate her for that.
The same was true of my decision to drop everything and ride my bike across the country. So it hasn't happened yet, but 2 years ago, I was visiting my grandparents in Santa Fe, and we had an unplanned day, so I decided to, can everyone hear me? Yeah. Great. I decided to rent a road bike and bob around the surrounding hills. And I was at the top of an especially large hill, which for those of you who are from New England, is like a mountain. And I was coasting down and I just thought, like, I could do this for a very, very long time. So I went home and I was like, you know, Mom, I want to ride my bike for a year. She's like, great, awesome. Whenever I tell people about it, they always say, oh, your parents must be so nervous, they must be so worried about you. And I imagine that she is, but she's never shared any of that with me. She only ever shared words of encouragement, though she was the one to buy me the equipment that I needed to always stay in touch and illuminated.
So ultimately, what may seem crazy to other people is just our mom's way of doing what makes her happy and not apologizing for it.
So next time we're going to make one of life's crazy decisions, our mom's voice will be in our head saying,
Why not?
go!
I was wondering why you both didn't come to Midland. Now I understand. You're like a Midland homeschool. I mean, it was so perfect. That was so great. And parents, what else do you need to know about a Midland education? You look at the back of that program. Jenny surrounds herself with horses, dogs, chickens, ducks, turkeys. All good. All good. So great to be here. It strikes me that Jenny continues to pursue her education in outer life, while her passion in inner life develop. By following her own self-reliant path and remaining true to herself, she creates countless opportunities for individuals and for teams to learn, to lead, and to grow. Midland students learn to answer the bell, to show up, to be useful. And Jenny reminds all of us that to serve others is in fact to serve ourselves. What we do counts, and more than ever, it matters. It is a privilege and honor to present Jenny Stine, class of 1982, with the 2016 John Dreyfus Alumna of the Year Award. Jenny? Jenny Stine.
The floor is mine. So, it is such a pleasure to be here, and I feel so honored. So thank you all. So first, I want to thank everyone who's here today, particularly my two kids and my fellow alumni, Jean and Jim, for your kind words and your support. I also want to thank the many others who are here from my time in Midland. You know who you are out there. The community piece is awesome. Thank you so much for coming today. And thank the Midland Board and the Dreyfus family for this award. When John called me and told me I had the award, I walked out behind my house afterwards and I was just blown away. I was like, wow, what a wonderful thing for the school to come back and ask me back and give me the award. So I was very excited. Okay, so it's been a long time since I was a student at Midland. In fact, I did the math. So I graduated in 1982, and that means for those of you who are still in school here, students in the audience, there's the same distance between you and me as I was from graduates of 1948. And these were the old men who would come to campus and say, oh, it's so bad they put electricity to campus. The oil lamps were so much better. I've got one at home. And I would be like, okay. So, but I'm here today and you're my captive audience. So I'm going to do my best to connect with all of you. First, let me tell you a little bit about what I've done since I was at Midland. Then I'm going to tell you why what I learned at Midland was so central to this. And in the end, I hope that because the Midland experience does span time and generations, you will see connections to your own experience, and you will feel inspired about your own future. After I went to Midland, I went to Stanford. I've got 3 Stanford degrees. I've worked at Caltech, MIT, and Harvard. And I've also worked for Accenture, which is a top consulting and technology firm. And I've been a part of a couple of startups. So pretty cool gigs, a lot of fun. I'm not wildly successful, far from it. Life is more complicated than that. But I've done some fun work. I've met a lot of really great people. And I've had the opportunity to be a part of some amazing organizations. And Midland is one of those. So what's the thread? Where's the career path? I'm not going to tell you that I got here by doing what I loved. That's a lie. Don't believe it. Often you do what you love in spite of your career. And I'm going to share some of that at the end when I talk about Midland's horse program. No, your career isn't about doing what you love, which is often a hobby or an avocation, but it's about learning to love what you do. And if you find you can't love what you do, it's about, in spite of your very best efforts, it's about finding an opportunity to do something new. I started out looking for clear career paths. I thought being a doctor was great until I had some volunteering experience, and that was not for me. I got as far as taking the LSAT for law school, and then I paused long enough and decided to go to graduate school. I had another idea, and that was the 80s, when there was a time when there were a lot of jobs for, supposed to be a lot of jobs for professors in the 90s. They were publishing curves in the New York Times and that kind of thing, and it seemed like a good plan. And so I became an expert in 17th century British history. But in 1995, the jobs didn't materialize as planned. Some of the professors who were supposed to retire back then are actually still working today. Not kidding. So those of us in graduate school started scanning obituaries to see where the jobs were. And I found I couldn't love that. It was not a good time. But, and this is central to the story that I'm telling you, in the midst of all of these challenges, there was a clear voice in my head. And that voice said, Jenny, you can do useful work. You have things to offer that people will value. You need to go find those opportunities. That voice came from Midland. So fast forward to 2001. After graduate school, I found my feet at Caltech, working in documentation and training. I taught myself how to build websites. I became the co-founder of a technology startup in Boston. It was September 2001, and I was at a conference in Washington, D.C., talking to investors about a cool product we had. And I had learned to love what I was doing. Then the world changed. The conference presentations were interrupted, and instead they projected videos of the World Trade Center and the Pentagon burning. There was no more talk about funding companies. We just wanted to get home as quickly as we could to our families. I started looking for something more secure than a startup, and 6 months later I was meeting with the Dean of Engineering at MIT. He told me I had not been given the job that I applied for, but he wanted to hire me anyway. He said to me, Jenny, you know education, you've been involved in a startup. What do you think about launching a new MIT office to provide professional education for engineers? Truth, I was not an engineer, although my dad and now my daughter are. And in fact, I had only a small idea of what professional education was. And this was MIT, for goodness sakes. But I didn't hesitate. Yes, of course I could do that. And as it turned out, it was something I could learn to love. What gave me the confidence to say yes when I had no idea, no way of knowing if I could do it? It was the firm belief that if you set your mind to something, you can make something, or fix something, or do something. And this, I believe, came from Midland. Today, you may not experience work period as a gift. But the freedom to do, the self-reliance that we learn at Midland has been instrumental in making me the person I am today. Fast forward again, it's a decade later, and I've proven my ability to lead and grow professional education divisions, both at MIT and Harvard. I learned that I could love what I was doing, and because I loved it, I was also good at it. I was an innovator, a motivator, a cheerleader, and I used my creativity to grow the businesses and make them successful. This drive to make, to do, to create is something I learned at Midland as well. I am in my heart an entrepreneur. Places like Stanford get a lot of buzz for graduating entrepreneurs, but I believe Stanford is better at finding them than making them. In my case, it was Midland that made me an entrepreneur. And I believe this is true of many of my fellow alumni and alumnae as well. We go out and we use our self-reliance to start new things, to improve things. We do our best to make the world a better place. There's a great book called Outlanders by Malcolm Gladwell that describes how you need to spend 10,000 hours practicing something to be really good at it. At the beginning of your career, students out there, what you need to do is to become good at some stuff. I don't think it matters as much what you become good at. The important thing is you start out not very good at it, you keep trying, you keep learning, and you become good. And then, in the process, you learn the difference between what great work looks like and what crappy work looks like. Then one day, you'll be surprised. You will start something new, or take a new direction, and that ability to understand and do great work will stay with you, even if what you're doing is different. In other words, you can go from 17th century British history to professional education to consulting, or you can become an amazing farm manager, or a contractor, or a teacher, or a designer, or a forest ranger, or an artist, or any of the many other accomplishments our alumni have made. So Midland gave me 3 big gifts that have helped me immensely in my career and life. It gave me a strong belief in the value of my work, it made me self-reliant, and it made me an entrepreneur. And now for my last story. High school can be a really tough time. We know that. But there was always one thing for me that lifted my heart, and that was the horses. I had the privilege of being head horse person, and I rode through college. Then, though, I gave horses up for 20 years, and that was a mistake. Do not abandon what you love. Scale it back if you have to, but don't let it go. Happily, today I have horses again, and every day when I go to work in the barn, I'm reminded that when you truly love something, it isn't work, it's just life. Finding what renews you, what lifts your spirits, what makes you feel strong and brave. That's what will sustain you through difficult times. These are things you may do in spite of your career, and you don't have to fit all the pieces together. They are already complete. They are you. I hope you've enjoyed my stories. Anyone who attends Midland has made an amazing and life-changing decision to be part of a school that will prepare them to make a difference in the world. So for those of you who are still in school, allow me to make some predictions. I know that you will get good at something, really good. You will be confident. You will believe in the value of your work. You will find a career that is both challenging and rewarding. You will learn to love what you do. It is the Midland way, and I, for one, can't wait to see what the next generation creates, invents, improves, or discovers. Thank you.
just go on a little, we'll keep going. Thank you so much, and for parents, especially for students in the middle of it. What a message for our time, and thank you for being the example to all of us today. I don't think it's by coincidence that I looked across and saw former head Eric Swain, who was the first recipient of the Dreyfus Award. Eric and Jane, if you'd stand for a second, please. And right next to them, Jim Quick, recipient of John Dreyfus Award, class of '68. Time to get back to work. We gotta move some benches. I want to thank all of you for coming. I want to make sure anybody has any announcements right now for this afternoon. You're welcome to take your child out, sign out with Johnny or with me. And I want to thank again all of you for making this such a tremendous weekend. Any other announcements? And you can just pick up one of those benches and take it right in. Johnny, over there.
Yeah, jobs will be communal for lunch, and I'll just assign jobs as we go through.
Great. If you want to work off those laps, your parents and you, that's good too.